Hello again, everybody. This is Stan Scott from Foggy Bottom Line Media. I'm here with my co-host, Scott.
Scott Konopasek.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for joining me today. It's Wednesday morning, January 28th, and we've had another shooting in Minneapolis. ICE, or Customs and Border Patrol agent, has killed a man named Pretti, who was an ICU nurse at a VA hospital in Minneapolis. The video on this one is a lot more clear than the Renee Good video, that it's obvious that they had no real good reason to shoot him. And it therefore raises some very interesting First Amendment and this time Second Amendment issues, because Mr. Pretti happened to be carrying a concealed firearm, which he had a permit for. But before we get started into all that, I want to remind you to subscribe, like, share. Go check out our Instagram. Follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. I think TikTok broke the other day, so I hope it's still working. But follow us on these other social media, Facebook and all these, so you can get this content as we expand what we're doing here. So subscribe, please. Scott, have you seen this video? Have you taken a look at this at all?
I have. I've seen it multiple times from multiple angles, and it's really incredulous that a supposed trained police force would be so undisciplined to do what it was that they did. There's always rules of engagement for us in the military, but also for civilian law enforcement. And this in no way could be justified by any of the ongoing rules of engagement. It looked like a murder.
Folks, when Renee Good thing happened, we showed some video of that. I'm going to resist the urge to do that this time. This one's a lot more graphic. I will include a couple of links to some news reports that show this. The New York Times did a great analysis. It's about 5.5 minutes long, but this is graphic, so I don't want to, put it up in front of some folks who might not want to see this kind of graphic. It's pretty obvious that federal agents shot this man while he was basically, covered by 5 or 6 agents and under their control. And he didn't start it with anything violent. And I think even Steve Miller said that there may have been some violations of protocol, which, if you'll excuse me, that's a pretty Orwellian way of describing it. Don't you think, Scott?
Absolutely. They had him on the ground. They attacked him unprovoked. They got him on the ground for no visible reason, looking at the videotape. And then when they had him on the ground, they were punching him, hitting him in the face. And then all of a sudden, they started shooting him. Not once, not twice, but they pumped 10 bullets into his body. And then they all backed up and just stood there and watched them die, watched them bleed out. They didn't render any aid at all. And when they did approach him, it's like they were looking for his ID and stuff. They weren't rendering any aid or assistance to him. That was just incredible to me.
So just to back up just a little bit, this guy Pretti, ICU nurse at a VA hospital, he's in the street holding his phone, and he looks like he's sort of directing traffic, right? And ICE agents are basically moving around. These agents have demonstrated that they don't like it when someone observes and records what they're doing. And at one point, one of the agents pushes a woman into a snowbank. And when that happens, Pretti basically steps between the woman and the agent as if to protect her, right? And the agent pepper sprays Pretti. So Pretti's got his phone in his right hand. He's holding up his left hand to block the pepper spray stream, right? And then the agent basically pushes him back with the pepper spray and gets him basically to where he's on the ground. He ends up falling down. They start
5 other
climbing
guys
on top of him and beating him.
Yeah. 5 other guys
right?
jumped in about that point.
Right. And at some point, at this point, he has done nothing violent unless you count intervening when they're about to get on a woman and beat her up. But they didn't know that he had a firearm yet. It's under his coat. He hasn't drawn it. His hands are empty except for the phone. And when they get him on the ground, they apparently discovered he had one. And one of the agents took it from him. And you can see clearly in the video the agent moving away with the firearm in his hand. Now,
Right.
I don't know, Scott, what do you think about this? I read one article that argued that the first shot was fired when the agent who took Pretti's firearm accidentally discharged it.
Well, that would explain a lot of things if it's an accidental discharge to begin with. But you know, it's protocol when law enforcement sees that whoever they're interacting with has a weapon to yell gun to inform everybody else that there's a weapon. Okay.
Right.
And I heard on one of the videos, I heard him, yell gun. And I think they panicked. They didn't stop to look or figure it out. Somebody just started shooting, whether it was inadvertent.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I think that's what happened. And it may have been an accidental discharge. Looking at the video, I've got experience. I've seen handguns fired a million times. And it didn't look to me like it went off, and I didn't hear a noise, but that would explain why they suddenly started shooting, or maybe just he yelled gun. Right?
Yeah. So that begs the question, why the hell did he have a gun drawn and a bead on this guy on the ground who hadn't done anything? I mean,
right.
Why was he? Why did they have a weapon pointed at him in the first place?
And not to mention the part where you might accidentally shoot one of your own people in a scrum like that.
Right.
Right. They had the guy under control. Anyway, folks, one of them shot him. I think he was shot first in the head, and then he went limp, and they pumped 9 more rounds into the guy's body. And like you mentioned before, Scott, they didn't render any aid. And in fact, a physician has filed an affidavit saying that he came up to them, said, "I'm a physician," and tried to render first aid, and they said no. They wouldn't let him do it. Same thing that happened in the good thing. So all kinds of questions here, folks. And Scott, I don't want to get on a rant or anything, but there's a couple of issues here. And it looks like the worm might be turning a little bit because of these issues. Because when the Second Amendment guys found out that Trump said after this, you don't get to have a gun. You don't get to carry a gun to a protest, although he didn't mind it on January 6th. Right. But that got the NRA involved. And so a lot of these Second Amendment rights folks are suddenly they're thinking, oh hell, it's one thing when they go door to door in immigrant neighborhoods and snatch people out of their houses because they're brown. But now they're talking about taking guns away. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Before we drill down too far on that, we should probably point out that within minutes of the shooting being reported on the news, we had the Secretary of Homeland Security alleging that he was a terrorist. He was there to murder. He was brandishing a gun, and he's a domestic terrorist. I don't even think his body had been picked up off the street by the time that she was rendering this judgment. And then the head of the Border Patrol said the same thing and said he shouldn't have had a gun. So that right. Immediately they blamed it on the fact that he had a gun. 2 problems with that. One is, yeah, he had a gun, but he didn't use it. It didn't indicate that he intended to use it. And the other is, while we're talking about the Second Amendment issue, is he is a legal gun. He had a permit and he had concealed carry permission. So if you're doing things right, and if guns are so important, and if good guys have the guns, and it's the guns who are going to save the day, then why the hell did they shoot him? Or why are they using that as a justification for the mistakes that were made by those border control agents?
And have you seen? Did you see the New York Times video? I'm sure you saw the press conference where Bovino said that, right? Did you
Yeah,
see what he was
I did.
wearing?
Yeah,
Check,
he had this leather strap. He looked like a Gestapo Nazi
check
uniform.
this. Check this out, folks. I'm going to just put a screenshot up real quick here, showing this guy at this news conference, and you tell me that doesn't look like Nazi brown shirt stuff with the brown, sort of leather strap across his chest, and the way he's talking, it's crazy. Watch the video. The link is in the show notes, the description on YouTube, so you can watch the video. This is at the very first part of it where Noem makes her statement. He makes a statement before they actually show the shooting. So it's not that graphic, but it really was an image, and I think that's one of the reasons why he actually got demoted after this, and they sort of pushed him out, and they sent Holman in, who is the head of the Customs and Border Patrol, to sort of take over, I don't know, on the ground command or something. But Bovino has been he's been quite the Nazi. I mean, honestly, walking around pointing at American citizens and yelling at them and basically saying, comply, comply, comply. If you don't do what we say, we're going to shoot you.
Right.
And so, and then this is also something these agents are doing to people now. They're walking up to people and saying, "Stop watching us. Haven't you learned your lesson?"
Right.
Right.
Right. As if it's a capital offense and they're going to get shot.
Renee Good got shot because she was observing us. We can do the same thing to you. This is crazy, folks. This is crazy. And the Second Amendment thing, I've been kind of hinting at this for a while, because at the end of the day, these Virginia Citizens Defense League guys, they go everywhere with a gun. They're in Kroger with a handgun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're telling them that suddenly the state can just shoot you because you're carrying a gun?
If they don't like where you're
take
at.
that well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to take that well, Scott. I mean,
I don't either. And I think we're hitting around the reason that Bovino was demoted and sent back home to California and relieved of his command is because there was pushback by the
Right.
Second Amendment folks and by
Yep.
just the general people on the street. It's like we're hitting a turning point, a tipping point, where
Right.
opinions are shifting. People who were ambivalent before because they didn't feel like it was directly affecting them, and they agreed that immigrants people who are here illegally should be deported. But now they're forming opinions about how it's being done and even
Right.
the wisdom of how it's being done. The independent voters have flipped in their support or lack of support for this policy in the
Yeah.
administration. Elected Republicans have finally come out, senators and Congress people, and disavowed this action and are calling for the policies to be rolled back. And and I also think, based upon the social media and interviews that I've seen in the traditional media as well, that this whole event has normalized the use of the F-bomb. I've heard people using the F-bomb, people that you wouldn't expect when they're talking about
Yeah.
this. They can't help but use that as a descriptor of what they think about what happened. So I think that the public outrage and the people showing up in large numbers, the Second Amendment folks and the NRA jumping on, a couple of elected Republicans. I think Trump does what he always does, is he backs down or backs
Trump.
off. Yeah. So again, earning the taco title.
Right.
Trump always chickens out. He did it the week before. He did it the week before after Davos.
Well, I don't think Trump is actually driving very much of this train, honestly. And you and I have talked about Trump's transactional nature, and I think we did a whole show on Trump looting the state, folks, and you ought to go back and look at that because that's really his goal. He's made billions of dollars as president while he's president, and if you're worried about Congress people investing in stocks when they almost certainly have inside information or they can pass laws that would affect a certain stock, then you should care about this. But Trump doesn't want people talking about this. He doesn't want people talking about the Epstein files that are still not released and are being hidden, right? So he's okay if this is in the news and this is what people are talking about. But when it starts raising awareness of the other things he's doing, because people are paying more attention to what he's doing, then it becomes a net negative for him. Now, this is all driven by Stephen Miller and Noem, both because I think they're white supremacists, and they're part of this NatCon, these national conservatives, which I'll do a show on that. And these white ethno Christians who want to create a white ethno state, Christian state, but their goal is to deport all the brown people they can, and you could almost call it ethnic cleansing, right? It's important to remember that Clinton and Bush and Obama and Biden all deported millions of people a year, but they didn't need to use these tactics to do it. Trump's only deported 1 million so far, and it's a quota. They've got a quota they're trying to meet. Stephen Miller has a quota. And it doesn't matter how they get to that quota or who they have to deport to do it. They deported a 5-year-old girl, an American citizen, to Honduras. Right. She's never been there before. She's an American citizen. And they don't like that she's an American citizen. So they deport her.
I think people are starting to realize that, hey, we've been deporting people for years and years and years. And it's never been this much of a drama. It hasn't been this much theater. It hasn't been this violent. It hasn't been this cruel. Can't we do this in a less cruel way? I think people are starting to realize that this isn't the way it's to be done. This is not the way it has been done. And hopefully we'll see some changes in strategy, but I'm not sure we will until Trump feels a little bit more political pressure.
If you look at if you look at some internal memos and such that have leaked from ICE and from CBP, their morale is apparently very low. And I imagine the way they're recruiting, openly taking Proud Boys, not doing background checks and all that. Mm-hmm. They're getting a lot of those guys who would have joined the Army just for a chance to shoot somebody, but the Army wouldn't take them. And these guys are taking them. I think you've got that cohort in this organization, but you still have some folks who have been with Customs and Border Patrol or Immigration and Customs Enforcement for years, and this is not what they signed up for, and it's making them look bad. What if you're an analyst, an ICE analyst or a CBP analyst working in D.C. somewhere, and you get invited to Thanksgiving? And someone says, "What do you do?" Well, I'm with Customs and Border Patrol. You scumbag, right?
Right.
How can you how can you do this? You're killing people for no reason. You're violating our Constitution. That's the kind of thing that makes people rethink their situation when their friends start looking at them. And Trump did this to intimidate Americans. He did this to intimidate Minneapolis, and I think Miller and Noem and Trump are finding out that there are some Americans out there who will not be intimidated.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to keep showing up. They're going to keep trying to protect their neighbors. And, I mean, some people would say, well, I'm not going to be loud about this because they might come after me. Well, come on.
Yeah. Well, It's very intentional that he's in blue states and blue cities. He's not doing this in Miami. He's not doing it anywhere in Florida. He's not doing it in Texas. He's not doing it in Dallas. He's not doing it in Corpus Christi. He's not doing it in Utah. He's not doing it in Montana. He's picked these places that he perceives he has enemies or he's been slighted or wronged,
Right.
and he's deliberately targeting these whole communities, and that's the pretext for all this drama that we're seeing. Just yesterday, I think he was talking to a crowd in Iowa, that President Trump, and he said that he won Minnesota 3 times,
Yeah.
and that's not true. And
No.
he said, but they stole it from me, and now they're seeing it's kind of like there's this payback that he's admitting to as part of the rationale for what he's doing, why he's in Minnesota. Besides, who the hell goes to Minnesota in January? It's freaking cold. Why would nobody would go
we
there?
got a taste of that here this week.
Yeah, I was thinking, hey, maybe we should go check it out and be part of the demonstration ourselves. And I thought, it's too cold. Maybe we should wait till they go someplace warmer.
Well, we got a taste of that here. And, I think it was 9 degrees last night, something like that
Yeah.
here in Virginia. But there's a lot of reasons to go up there and be part of this and help document it. I think, I'm very sensitive to the part where these are local neighborhoods, the local people working together. I've read some articles by journalists who went to do that, to cover it, not so much to be part of it, but to cover it. And there's a lot of suspicion when strangers come in. So I'm not sure we would add anything, if we were to go, besides just, doing podcasts from up there, or, doing TikTok things or something like that. But I think that we've got some stuff to deal with here. Data centers. They're talking about building creating an ICE detention center not far up the road from me here in Hanover County. So we'll be talking about that later this week. There's it's Wednesday. You won't see this before this happens, but by the time you see this, they will have had a rally at the Hanover County Board of Supervisors meeting to let them know that Hanover residents don't really want a prison
Right.
in a warehouse in their community.
Right.
And I'll be there for that. So you'll probably see something from me on that. But I think where we are now is that the Trump administration, mainly on the instructions or ideas of Stephen Miller, set a quota for deportations under color of deporting dangerous criminals. They've basically just gone door to door, pulling people out of their cars, pulling people out of their homes, to basically deport as many people as possible. And many of the people they're deporting should be deported.
Right.
But the great majority of them should not. They're here under asylum requests. They pulled them out of courtrooms where these guys, all these conservatives who argue, well, if you just do it the right way, that you're good. Just go get to the back of the line and do it the right way. But these people are doing that, and they're still getting deported. But it's like you said, Scott, it's the strategies and techniques, the methods they're using, the anti-constitutional, the intimidation, the brutality, and now really being super, super trigger happy has caused some folks to rethink it. It's losing support. I mean, Trump won in 24 because a lot of independents were worried about the price of eggs, and they voted for him instead of Kamala Harris. And there were a bunch of other reasons too, not to mention Gaza and the way she took over for Biden in the middle of things without any kind of primary process. But at the end of the day, people were worried about gas prices and egg prices and grocery prices and rent. And so they voted for Trump because he promised to fix that. He's done nothing to try to fix it at all. And now and by the way, deporting all these people is not going to fix that, right? That's only going to make strawberry prices go up.
Right.
Because the guys that pick them are gone.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
and the guy that's building your housing is gone.
right.
So,
There's just sort of shifting gears a little bit to the fake affordability issue, as Trump calls it. Uh, you know, between the economic impacts of uh, these demonstrations, and losing our workforce, the tariffs, the
mhm,
clawbacks of grants and unfunding of programs that are the engines of parts of our economy are all working against any kind of economic growth or recovery.
right,
And the only metric that Trump is using is the market, the stock
right,
market, which
sure,
is not the economy, and it's not a good indicator. But sooner or later, the things are going to implode. All these things are going to come together, and people are going to start to realize. And I think, actually, I believe people are starting to see this more and more.
I, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of pushback now. This is why even JD Vance is doing a little bit of damage control. Several people in Congress, even a couple of Republican senators, have told Trump that Kristi Noem needs to go, and if he doesn't fire her, they will impeach her. And I think this is a case where that impeachment might actually result in a conviction. You might get
Right.
2/3 of senators to convict her. I think a lot of the senators who voted to approve her nomination regret that vote, and they would switch if they had a chance to.
Yeah.
You've got people calling for general strikes, and they had one yesterday in Minnesota, which got the attention of 3 or 4 dozen big Minnesota-based corporations who can kind of see the writing on the wall. None of this is good for the economy.
Right.
Scott, you and I harped on this when we talked about Davos and about how the main thing these corporations want, besides all your money, is predictability.
Right.
They want predictable markets. They want predictable security conditions, both locally and nationally. Right? They
Right.
they they want to think they can open a storefront in Minneapolis and and actually make money.
Right. That
Okay.
they can keep their workforce, that customers are willing to get out on the street and patronize their business. Uh, yes. So, but we've known always that Trump's MO is to create as much uncertainty and chaos as possible. So, in many ways, we've probably become a little inured with
Yep.
that. But there's going to be a price tag put on it here soon, as these corporations and businesses and the whole economy actually suffers. And another consequence of all this that was really unanticipated is we may have another government shutdown before the week is over
Yep.
because of this. It just so happened that the bill in the Senate, the budget bill in the Senate this week, is the one dealing with funding of DHS.
Right.
And Democratic congressmen and senators are saying, how can we give ICE more money when they're doing
Right.
this? How
Yeah.
can we vote for it at this moment? And then there's some Republicans who also are making the same point. So we could see another shutdown here at the end of the week. Uh, Unfortunately, it's not really going to impact ICE because the big beautiful bill gave them enough money to operate for the next couple of years. They took the money from Medicare and Medicaid and basically transferred it to ICE for immigration enforcement. So it's not going to any government shutdown or failure of this bill funding to pass for DHS is not really going to have any immediate impact.
Well, I may have to disagree with you there, Scott, because the way the budget process works, there's an appropriation side of it, and then there's an authorization side of it. And what
Right.
what Congress will vote for this month is basically a continuing resolution that continues funding under the current appropriations and authorizations. If there's agreement between the two parties, they could cut some of that ICE funding from the big beautiful bill as part of this continuing resolution.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Right?
I don't think it's a CR this time. I think
No.
they're trying to pass a new budget for all these agencies in small
Well,
bites. They call it the minibus, a minibus approach to the budget.
as opposed to omnibus.
Yeah.
So, I like that
So,
minibus.
so the appropriators are actually developing budget bills and
Got it.
changing spending levels for the next year. They're just passing them incrementally rather than all at once, because it's easier to get them passed incrementally. So this week, the increment that contains ICE funding and Border Patrol funding is up before the Senate. It already passed the House, and the House is in recess. Now the Senate has to vote on it, and this Friday is the deadline that the Senate and the House gave themselves back the last time we had this continuing resolution argument. So if they don't have this part passed by this weekend, it's going to shut down DHS theoretically. Well, nobody really. I guess we're always on unknown territory and plowing new ground, but I think it's quite a conundrum for Democratic leadership, because the last time defund the police came up in 2020 during Black Lives Matter, that turned out to be a very potent political weapon for Republicans to use against the Democrats. So the Democrats have to figure out how they can recharacterize this as not defund ICE and not branded in a way that can be weaponized back against them, and still do what their conscience and their morals tell them, and what they think that their voters want them to do.
I tell you, I would predict that any Democrat who votes to give Trump and Noem all of the funding they've requested for ICE. I mean, the ICE budget under this bill is, what is it, three times the budget of some countries for their whole military. It's ridiculous how just overfunded this would make them. And folks, if you've ever been in government contracting or any kind of government sort of spending analysis, if you want to create the conditions for corruption, give an agency twice as much money as they need to do their job.
Right.
And you will see corruption every freaking time. But at this point, any Democrat that doesn't vote to cut funding for ICE will see a primary. And in what looks like a wave election, I can imagine a lot of incumbent Democrats, especially in blue districts, or plus 3 or 4 blue districts, might be saying, I at least have to make a show of stopping this. And that may look like, okay, you got to give us some concessions in order to get this money. And it may look like, let's just bounce this back to where it was last year and see what happens this year, right? Because honestly, if you ask James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, how does Congress make the executive branch do what it wants them to do? Well, they take back the money, right?
Right.
If ICE is out of control, well, let's take their money, and ICE will be in control because they won't have any money. And you get your money back when you start doing it the way we tell you to do it. And this is, for a political scientist, this is kind of the core problem we have now, is that The parties have captured government so that the three branches aren't jealous of their own power, as Hamilton would have called it in the Federalist Papers, right? So, the courts and the Congress should be jealous of executive power and sort of restrict their ability to do things they don't want. And the power of the purse is the best way they have to do that, right?
Right. Well, we've talked about this before, how elected officials are given more fealty and loyalty to their political parties than to their office or the institution in which they serve. And Congress definitely could claw back its power, could become a check on the executive branch tomorrow if they wanted to.
Yep.
But it's not Congress as an entity or as an institution, but it's not the elected representatives. It's the Republican elected representatives in Congress have the power.
Right.
They're the only ones with the power to take back and rebalance the separation of powers, to balance Article 2 and Article 1. It's only those small number of people who can make a difference. The rest of us are powerless to watch the expansive powers going to the executive branch.
Well, we're up over 35 minutes, so let's circle back and sort of summarize a little bit here, if that's okay with you, Scott.
Sure.
So ICE, the federal agents, federal law enforcement agents who are law enforcement agents, but they have a very restricted sort of law enforcement mission, and that is enforcing immigration and customs laws. They have no authority of any kind to enforce local ordinances, including traffic laws. So they don't have the authority to pull me out of my car because they don't like the way I'm parked in the street. Okay? They have no authority to detain or arrest an American citizen unless they have a warrant or probable cause to believe that that American citizen is harboring an immigrant fugitive, right, who's broken immigration and customs laws. Okay? But they are doing this anyway, and they're brutally beating people for no reason. Did you see the image, the picture? Check this image out, folks, of this guy. They've got him on the ground, and the guy is spraying pepper spray in his face from 6 inches away.
Right.
The guy's no threat to anyone. He's not armed. And he's spraying pepper spray in the guy's face for fun.
Right.
To intimidate someone.
Right.
They're trying to make an example of people. They're trying to make an example of people so they can get Americans to shut the up.
Yeah.
Good news is that's not working, and it's sort of backfiring on them because now they've shot a second person. The video is very clear that this person, albeit armed, was not a terrorist, was not violent, and was only trying to help a woman who they'd pushed down and wasn't doing anything to obstruct these agents in their mission.
Right.
Okay.
These Border Patrol guys are really unprepared for the situation and the mission that they've been given and where they find themselves. These guys were all pulled from the southern border. They're from California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, down where the weather's warm and balmy, and the border is a big desert. There's hardly any urban centers along that long stretch of border. So they're used to working out in the sticks and being able in a warm environment without any civilians around, so they can do what they want. So now they've been put in an urban environment in weather conditions that they're not familiar with, that are miserable, and have to deal with civilians scrutinizing them, mocking them, harassing them, and they're just not prepared or trained or professional enough to be able to do this less violently.
And part of the good news, honestly, is that we live in a society now where literally everyone, almost literally everyone, carries a high-powered, high-definition video camera around in their pocket. And not only can they take photographs and video with that little thing in their pocket, they can send it around the world as it happens
In seconds,
if they want to do that, right? So this means the government, it's really a lot harder for government to cover this kind of stuff up. And, you know, the Renee Good thing, well, she was trying to run over the guy with her car. Yeah, I don't buy that, but it gave him something to stand on, a grain of truth for that bullshit lie. But this one doesn't. This one makes it very obvious, and the worm is beginning to turn because even Trump is starting to back off a little bit. He's backing off from his "you can't have a gun" statement. Noem is doing damage control. Vance is doing damage control. Bovino's been pulled back, right? And hopefully with his Nazi uniform. And the people who wanted this to happen, they wanted these deportations to happen, they're finding out that, first of all, they don't like it the way it's being done. And second of all, they're finding out they're going after people they didn't expect to go after. You know, the MAGA guy, the Trump voter, whose wife is from Venezuela, right? I didn't think they were going to come and deport my wife.
Right.
She's a good MAGA person. And that is causing a lot of these independent voters who suddenly showed up because eggs were getting expensive or switched from Kamala to Trump or didn't vote at all because of Gaza was one reason a lot of people told me. These people are waking up and going, wait a minute, this is not what I signed up for. And you start including the farmers who are going out of business because of the tariffs, right, and the trade wars. And you've got a situation where Trump understands that it is possible for him to piss people off enough so this time when he gets impeached, he actually does get convicted, even if Republicans still control the Senate. So
yeah,
that's what he's seeing. And again, it's all transactional, right? I mean, he can't keep grifting if he's not president anymore, right?
Right. And he can't get impeached if the Democrats aren't in control. So why even have this election?
Yeah.
Yeah, in his mind. So I keep circling back around to that. I'm really concerned about interference with our election because he knows that once the Republicans lose the majority, and they're almost certain to, with all these antics that are going on and the public's response, Democrats are poised certainly to take back the House, and more likely that they have a shot at taking the Senate as well. So that's a existential threat to Trump, because impeachment will follow. So
with or without conviction, the Democrats will impeach again,
right?
And if that does nothing but make it all public and obvious to everyone, but I think maybe, I mean, obviously, one way to influence the election would be to intimidate people in blue states like Minnesota or Virginia.
Yeah, just like they're doing right now. Yeah,
just like they're doing now. It appears to me that may be less effective than they think, because of the way local organizers have put together a system in Minneapolis to protect their neighbors. I would suspect they would do something similar to protect their right to vote, right?
Right.
And I know people in Virginia would do that. But we need to get you on maybe one day. We need to spend an episode or get you on to talk about what the possibilities of influencing an election the other way are, which would be hacking it somehow. You've said many times on this show, and to me personally, that you don't think that's very easy, if possible at all. But it might be good to get you talking about this for 30 or 40 minutes to explain to folks
absolutely. Hey, that's
what
my
they
passion.
need to look out for, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, folks, we live in interesting times, and I guess we're all blessed or cursed with that. But things are starting to come to a head a little bit. I think ICE overstepped some. I understand the project Stephen Miller's trying to put on here. But I think if he had been a little bit less heavy-handed with it, it would be a lot more successful in the long run. No one's going to complain because you're deporting people who need to be deported. But people are going to start looking at you funny when the person you're deporting is that guy that's been working for the same construction company for 25 years, right? Or the grandma who's been here 30 years and opened that little Mexican taqueria down the street where everybody says the best tacos in town are to be found, right? Whether she's here documented or not, that's the person. She's an entrepreneur. She's become as American as anybody, right? She's a business person. She's providing a service local people want. That's the person we need to find a pathway for. If she's not legal, we need to make it so she can become legal easily, right?
Right.
And that's another thing these guys are doing, and we'll talk about that some more, is they've shut off people who say, well, you just got to get at the back of the line, but they've shut all that off now. They're not letting anyone do that. We did a show where we talked about how they're basically going into courtrooms and stopping, citizenship oath ceremonies right before they happen. Those are all people who did it the right way.
Right.
Right.
And really, we're trying to solve this immigration problem, in my opinion, exactly the wrong way. We're attacking it at the end when we should be attacking it at the beginning. We need immigration law reform in this country. We need to have a coherent immigration process with clearly defined rules and expectations, because a lot of people don't know what they need to do. Nobody knows what they need to do. We haven't had election or immigration reform since the first years of Ronald Reagan's presidency, almost 50 years ago. But we keep complaining that it's a huge problem. That's one of the biggest problems facing the country, but we won't do what it takes to solve the problem, which is come up with a coherent set of rules that are fair, that make sense for the economy, make sense for people who are already here, and make sense for businesses. So anyway, we're at the wrong end of the problem here.
I agree with that completely, and I'll just point out that Congress in 2024 had a bipartisan immigration reform bill that would have resolved a lot of these issues and really would have cut immigration quite a bit. Legal immigration would have created new ways to enforce what we do have, new ways to monitor people who come here to go to school and then overstay their visas, that kind of thing, right? Which is how most illegal immigrants get here, by the way. They're not swimming the Rio Grande. And Trump put the kibosh on it. He said, nope, don't pass that, because then I can't run on immigration next year.
Yeah, it takes away my issue.
Takes away my issue. And so a lot of people voted for him because of immigration, but now they're regretting that vote. So,
which is exactly why the recent immigration reform, plus Mario, I'm losing his name right now, but this is back in 2010. We had another election or immigration reform package put together and it was bipartisan and it was comprehensive. And again, the Republicans killed it. So as long as this is an issue, immigration is an issue that inflames people to the advantage of the Republican Party, it's not going to be solved.
They don't want any immigration at all unless it's white South African refugees. And, that's just where we are. So a lot to talk about. A lot's happening. It's happening very quickly. We're working on some stuff. I've been promising some new stuff. I've been working on a website over the weekend and this week, a new Foggy Bottom Line Media website. That will be up soon, and we'll start promoting that. For now, you can find us on www.foggybottomline.com. We're on YouTube at Foggy Bottom Line Media, and on the other social media platforms, Insta and TikTok at Foggy Bottom Line. So keep an eye out, subscribe, share, like, let us know what you think. We're starting to get some comments on the YouTube videos. Some of them are very critical, but that's fine. That's good. We want to hear what you think. If you think we're getting something wrong, we want you to let us know that. Scott and I can't speak for you, Scott, but I think we're both reality-based people.
Right.
If you give me the data, I will change my mind on something.
Right.
But you need to give me data, good sources, and not, well, Donald Trump said this, so it must be true type stuff, right?
Right. Right. Evidence-based. Yeah.
Evidence-based. And we want to get this out there, but we want to make sure we're putting out good information. We're not going to be in the business of saying, well, this is the way I want it to be, so it must be the way it is, right? That's not how we're going to roll. So,
Right.
any last thoughts there, Scott, on this or anything else?
Yeah, I think our brand is belly aching about problems and talking about how complicated they are and what the factors and variables are for finding a solution, and stopping short of offering solutions, and leaving that to the listeners. But the other thought that I have is, if this tipping point that we're at right now is actually going to continue to tilt in the direction of resolving the issues, people need to keep talking about it. Talk to your family, talk to your coworkers, talk on your social media. Let people know how you feel about this. Silence is complicity. So keep talking about it, and let's tip this over.
I think we'll get around to talking about solutions, because Scott and I both have some thoughts on that. But we want this to be a conversation about what those solutions look like, and really about what the problem actually is. And I think, Scott, that's a great point you make. Talk to your friends, talk to your family. There's no sense trying to debate someone. There's no sense in, I don't think there's a lot of value in saying, well, wait a minute, that's not true. Look at this number. You got the wrong number. You got the wrong source, whatever. I think one of the things we want to try to do as we have these conversations with family members and friends and coworkers is, what got you to this place? What is the underlying issue that got you to a place where you're okay with having a president whose only goal is to make money as president? He got no principles. He just wants to make money. And he's giving a lot of people what they want. A lot of people want this kind of deportation strategy. A lot of people want the Project 2025 stuff with respect to women's rights to come on, right? A lot of people want to see a white Christian ethno-state where married couples, man and woman with 4 kids, are privileged over single people or gays or others, right? A lot of people want that. But what got you to the place where that's what you want, where that's the way you think the world ought to look, and where someone who disagrees with you about God or what the law ought to be or the way women should behave are basically subhuman, and you can just send thugs out to stomp on their necks? It's no accident that ICE agent called Renee Good an effing bitch.
Right.
That's the way he sees uppity women, especially gay uppity women, right? And the thing that got them, and the thing that got them with Pretti, is that people are looking them in the face and saying, wait a minute, what you're doing is not good. You should be ashamed of yourselves. And people don't like to be shamed. So sometimes that'll change behavior. Not you should shame your dad because he's a Trumper, but try to find out, try to talk to him, and try to get some thinking on how they got to this place in their heads. Was it they lost a job to a black person or a Mexican or something, or a woman, something like that? I don't know. That's one possibility. So anyway, we'll keep belly aching, as you put it, and I like that word because it's a highly technical military term.
Yes, what soldiers do.
It's what soldiers do, especially old ones with microphones. So Again, Scott, thanks for joining me. As always, we will continue to talk about this. We'll continue to work on this project and making it better, giving you more content, doing more stuff. We've got a lot of ideas that we're about to put in place, but we need your help. Tell us what you think. Subscribe, like, share, comment. That juices the algorithm. It gets us to a place where we can get these voices out in the world a little bit more strongly. So appreciate you listening. Let us know what you think. Subscribe and all that. Scott, appreciate you, sir. And take care of yourself. Try to stay warm. It can't be too warm in the shop, but you got plenty of wood to burn if you need to start a fire, I guess.
That's true. That's true. Hey, we get do our own protesting in the cold maybe tonight.
Yeah. So, and we'll report on that. If not tonight, then later this week we'll do something on what that looked like. They're not going to vote on anything tonight, or they didn't vote on anything. That, as far as I know, they're right now because it's the future. But there's going to be a rally to let the board of supervisors know that there's a lot of people around here who don't want to see an ICE facility. So we should see what happens. Take care, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be careful out there. Stay warm. If you're in Virginia or the East Coast, it can be pretty snowy and cold. And a lot of us aren't very used to it. So take care of yourselves. Be safe. And we'll see you again next week, if not before. So, Scott, take care of yourself. Have fun, sir.
Okay. Carry on.
And this is Stan Scott with Foggy Bottom Line Media. Foggy Bottom Line Media. And I'm out here. Thanks.